recap of what we discussed yesterday. Basically, we started with what basically when does a condition occurs, and what is the idea behind the condition, and what are the evaluation parameters. And by this time, you know, when the load is greater than the capacity, a condition occurs. Then we went on with the three different types of taxonomy. I didn't change. This is feedback. Are you able to see the screen, guys? Are you able to see the screen? Hello? Yes, please, anyone acknowledge. Are you able to see the screen? And I don't know, I lost the connectivity. Yes, anyone? I didn't receive the message also. Guys, are you able to see the screen? By this time, you know, we have router-centric versus post-centric, reservation-based, feedback-based, window-based versus the rate-based. I think I have discussed yesterday. If you want, you can go through once again with the recording, whatever you have. And then I moved on with a very important concept, that is the evaluation criteria. How do we evaluate network capacity? It is based on the power of the network, which is the ratio of throughput to the delay. And I think I went on with the queuing disciplines. One is what is the first in first out method, and one more is the fair queuing. And then from then we moved on to the different type of condition mechanism. Your AIMD, slow start, fast retransmission, and fast recovery. See, remember, from exam point of view, either of the one could be a good question. Explanation of any one of the method could be a good question, right? So today I'll directly enter into our some more mechanisms. Before entering into some more mechanism, I'll go to one structure, what we call it as the traffic shaping structure. Basically, when we want to increase the quality of service in a network, we make use of this traffic shaping. Remember, this traffic shaping holds good both for your ATM type of a networks as well as for your TCP/IP based network also, right? So basically, what is the traffic shaping? Traffic shaping is nothing but a mechanism to control the amount of data that is entering into the network, or I can say that it is a mechanism to control the amount and the rate of the traffic sent to the network. Right? So here we come across two happening type of traffic shaping methods. One is what we call it as the leaky bucket algorithm, and one more is what we call it as the token bucket. I'll just do the leaky bucket because this is what is the part of our syllabus is talking about. So when I mean a leaky bucket scenario, remember it is also acting as a congestion prevention technique also. Though it is improving the quality of service, basically the idea behind the traffic shaping was to reduce the congestion before it happens in a network or at the routers. So let me go into the idea of a leaky bucket. It is very simple. Here a bucket is taken as an imaginary concept, and if the bucket has a small hole at the bottom, then the water leaks from the bucket. And how does the water leaks? Everybody are aware of this. The water leaks at a constant rate as long as there is a water in the bucket. So the rate at which the water leaks does not depend on the rate at which the water is inputted into the from the tap, right? So the input rate can vary. So this can vary. I think I'll share my screen. The input rate can vary. Only thing is your output rate should be a constant rate. So where in which I don't want to burden your network, I will make use of mechanism of bucket algorithm. Similarly, we have one more, that is the token bucket, which is based on if a token is given, then only it has a permission to pass the data into the network. That is the idea behind a token bucket. So what did I specify? The input rate is not fixed. The input rate can vary. Only thing is the output rate will remain constant because we have taken a small hole in this, where in which the output rate is always the fixed concept, right? The same concept we can apply into our networking strategy, right? So what do I mean by the same strategy applied is here? Refer this particular first figure. What do I have here? I have that. Let me assume that the network is committed with a bandwidth of some fixed bandwidth. Let me assume that fixed bandwidth as an example to be 3 Mbps. When I mean 3 Mbps, the output rate at which the packets has to move out of the imaginary concept is the rate could be the bandwidth could be 3 Mbps. Now, what is happening? The input rate is not at all fixed. As you can see here, I have a data, a bursty data of 2 seconds, and what is happening? It is flowing at a rate of 12 Mbps. So when it is flowing at a rate of 12 Mbps for 2 seconds, then the total rate would be 12 into 2, that is 24 megabits per second of data has been transmitted. Then what will happen? Then the host, whichever the machine is sending, is silent for how many seconds? Another 5 seconds it is silent. That means I don't have a constant flow into this particular imaginary concept, right? So for 5 seconds it is remaining constant, and then once again it is transmitting at a rate of 2 Mbps for 3 seconds. So that means what would be your data rate? It would be 30 MB, it would be 6 Mbps. So totally what I have as the bursty data, this 24 plus 6 is altogether 30 megabits per data, sent in how many seconds? Sent in 10 seconds. Then now, to make the traffic to be very smoother, what the leaky bucket will do is, this bucket, which is an imaginary concept, smoothens the traffic by sending out the data. What is that I have committed to? I have committed to 3 megabits per second. So it sends out the data at a rate of 3 megabits per second during the same 10 seconds. So without this concept, what will happen? This bursty data, which is 12 Mbps into 2, that is 24 Mbps of data at this instant, would burden the concept, or it would consume more bandwidth at the starting itself, so that the rest of the data would start. Right now, applying this particular concept, you are preventing the congestion and allow fixed rate. So would work, right? So if I flowchart of this leaky bucket, FIFO technique. So what is that? I am holding a queue. Packet are being queued into the buffer, and if the traffic consists of fixed size of packets. Now, example, if I take ATM network, your ATM networks are fixed size packet network, right? So at that particular concept, I can make use of this leaky bucket algorithm, right? So this, what will happen? The process removes a fixed number of packets from the queue at the tick of each clock. You know that when I mean each clock, it is nothing but the concept of the fixed rate of data flowing out of this particular bucket. What will happen? Each particular packet would be traffic consists of a variable length packet. Now I was talking about a fixed length. If it consists of a variable length packet, the fixed rate output must be based on the number of bytes or the bits, right? So what is that? Initially, a counter is being set with the tick of the clock 1, and if n is greater than the size of the packet. So if I assume the size of the packet to be 5, so if n is greater than the size of the packet, then then send the packets. You will send the packets. So if it is within that limit, you send the packets, and you are taking out the packets at a very constant rate. Hence, what you will do, you will discard or remove that particular packet, and you decrement that particular packet size. So this is how your traffic shaping algorithm may work. So with this idea, let me move on to some congestion avoidance mechanism. Our congestion avoidance mechanism as a case study, see, it depends on what type of TCP we are using. Either it could be a Tahoe type of TCP or a retro type of TCP. I'll not go in depth of all those things. Only thing is what I have to restrict with the syllabus. So I'll go with the avoidance mechanisms such as decibit, one more is random early detection, and one more is source-based congestion algorithm. Right. So basically what we are trying to do is, once congestion happens, the TCP has to apply the congestion mechanisms. How will this mechanism be implemented? Is based on the avoidance strategy also. So what is happening? Yeah, this congestion strategy would be control congestion once it happens, and repeatedly increase increase the load in an effort to find the point at which congestion occurs, then you back off. An alternate strategy also would be to predict when congestion is about to happen, as we discussed in our previous examples, like AIMD, as well as your slow start, as well as your fast recovery and fast retransmission. Right. Then reduce the rate before the packets start being discarded, and apply these strategy. And two such possibilities are your decibit as well as the random early detection, and these are outer-centric type of congestion avoidance mechanism. So let me go into the first one, that is decibit. Basically, this mechanism was developed for the use of the digital network architecture. Basically, what is this? This is a connectionless type of a network. Though it is a connection type of a network, but the protocol what it uses is a TCP protocol. So protocol is a connection oriented, but the network itself is a connectionless. So at that particular instant, we make use of this decibit type of an avoidance method. So this mechanism could also be applied to TCP as well as IP. So idea is very simple. The idea is to more evenly split the responsibility for congestion control between the routers as well as the end nodes. See, it is not only the responsibility at the network to reduce the congestion, the end nodes can also reduce the congestion to some extent. So that is the idea behind your decibit. So how we proceed is, what will happen, each router, whenever you are sending a packet, remember, each router monitors the load it experience in the network, right? So every time the router is monitoring a load on the network, and this explicitly, the router explicitly notifies the end user when the congestion is about to occur. So you are getting some alarm type of signals, whether to send the packets into the network or not by the router. Now, how this is happening is, this notification, that is sending another alarm, is implemented by setting a binary congestion bit in the packet that flow through the router, right? So hence the name, we call it as a decibit. So whenever you are sending the packets, while sending the packet, you set the bit to be 1, and that bit is indicating you or telling you that there is a congestion in the network. So please try to avoid sending the data. Now, how is this done? As the destination host, what it will do, it copies the congestion bit into the acknowledgements, right? So how do I know? There is no mechanism to tell that there is a congestion occurred to the end node, right? So when can I know that the congestion has occurred or not? It is only based on the acknowledgement policy. So the destination will copy this congestion bit into the acknowledgement itself. You know that we receive an acknowledgement at any cost, right? So when there is no acknowledgement, what that implies that there is a congestion in the network. When we receive an acknowledgement, that implies that there is no congestion in the network, right? So what we try to send is, it tries to send this congestion bit set to 1 within the acknowledgement itself back to the source. So finally, the source, that is your end machine, will adjust the sending rate and try to avoid the congestion. So this is the story behind your decibit. So how do we represent this? Is we represent this by taking the average Q length, by taking the average Q length, and if the average Q length is greater than or equal to 1, at that time the packet arrives. Right? So this average Q length is measured over a time interval that will span over the last busy time with the ideal cycle plus the current busy cycle. So how do I monitor this with respect to the previous cycle, with respect to the current cycle, as well as with respect to the ideal cycle? So that could be your average time. So a Q length of 1 seems to optimize the power function. Right. So this is the idea beyond your decibit algorithm. So we have one more strategy here is, if less than 50% of the packets which we had received, that is the acknowledgement which you had received by the source, has the congestion bit set to 1, then it will increase the congestion window by 1 packet. That is the strategy, right? So if more than 50% of the last window of the packet has a congestion bit set to 1, then the source decreases its congestion by an amount of probably 0.8 0.875 times. Now, where did I get all these particular values? All these particular values is based on your AIMD procedure. What we told in an AIMD procedure is when you receive an acknowledgement within the time, what it will do, it will increase the congestion window by 1. When within the time, when the acknowledgement is not received, then what it will do, it will reduce to half of its value, right? So whereas here it is not reducing to half of its value, it is reducing to the slow start concept. That is, it is setting a threshold and it is reducing the congestion window size by that many times. So your AIMD comes into picture if 50% of the bit is, if less than 50% of the bit is set to 1, then you will just send the packet by increasing the congestion window by 1. If more than 50% of the windows are set windows, that is the acknowledgement bit, that is the congestion bit is set to 1, then definitely what you do is you decrement the congestion window. So this is how your decibit works with, and how the end system knows about these concepts is based on the idea of the average queue length. Right? So with this idea, we have one more type of an algorithm for a congestion avoidance mechanism. That is what we call it as the RED. Basically, the idea in the RED is the router will notice the queue, and this queue is getting backlogged. If this queue is getting backlogged, then what it will do is it will randomly drop the packet, and this is an indication of congestion to the host machine. So how randomly will it drop the packet is the idea behind the random early detection. I'll once again repeat, it is also a congestion avoidance mechanism. What I'm trying to do here is, once the router will see that a queue has been occurred in the network, there should be some means to inform to the host not to send the packets. So what it will do, it will randomly discard the packets, and this randomly early discard of a packet is an indication for your source to just drop, just to refrain from sending the packet. Now, how do we drop the packet is a trick in this particular algorithm. So we said that we are dropping the packet randomly, right? How randomly we are dropping it is the question. So basically, this is based on one particular criteria, and that criteria is the base to drop the packet is based on the probability, and the base for this probability is the length of the queue. So based on the length of the queue, we are trying to drop the packet. Now, for example, every time we need to monitor the queue level, and if the buffer is in some level, that indicates that everything is fine. That is, if the buffer is in proper level, then there is no indication of dropping of the packet. If the buffer crosses some threshold, okay, so there should be some threshold. If it is within the threshold, then there is no dropping of the packet. If it crosses the threshold, then what you have to do is we have to drop the packet. So what is the threshold we will maintain in case of a random early detect is the phenomena. So basically, we identify three categories of this threshold. Before going to the three categories, I would like to repeat this RED, that is random early detection, is a proactive approach. When I mean a proactive approach, it means that the router discards one or more packets before the buffer becomes completely full to indicate the other machines that please don't send the packet. So each time a packet arrives, the RED algorithm computes this average queue length, and there is a variable called average which determines or which tells us to adjust whether we have to send the packet into the network or not. So how is this being indicated? So this has been indicated by two queue length thresholds, and these two queue length threshold is what we call it as the minimum threshold as well as the maximum threshold. So basically, how we calculate this average length is, this average length is calculated based on this particular formula. That is, I have a sample length. What is a sample length? Sample length is nothing but a queue length each time a packet arrives, right? So this is a weighted concept. So always we calculate the weighted running average, and the value of that weight is taken between 0 to 1. Usually they say that if we take between 0.02, then I can calculate the average length as 1 minus the weight into the average length plus the weight into the sample length. Sample length, from where I got it? The sample length I got it from the Q length each time a packet arrives. And what would be this average length? This average length would be the previous average length, right? So this is how we calculate the average Q length. So having this criteria in hand, we decide the dropping probability based on these three conditions. Now, if your average length is less than or equal to the minimum threshold, where is the minimum threshold? Probably this is your buffer. This many packets have been filled into the queue. And if I set this as the minimum threshold and this as the maximum and this as the average length, then if your average length is less than or equal to the minimum threshold, then you queue the packet. Okay. So if your average length is between the minimum threshold and maximum threshold, then calculate the probability P randomly, right? Why we calculate this? To drop the packet and drop arriving packet with that probability P. So third case is, if this maximum threshold crosses the limit, that is, if your maximum threshold is less than or equal to the average length, then you drop the arriving packet. So based on this, the decisions are taken in case of your random length. So we said that we are using the Q length as the indication. So what we do is, we first calculate the average length. We calculated the average length by this formula. Usually in most software implementations, the Q length is measured every time a new packet is arrived. In hardware, it might be calculated at some fixed sampling interval. So both the ways we can monitor this this dropping of the packet. But what will happen with this type of an algorithm is, it is very hard to determine or very hard to adjust to the tunable parameters. What are the tunable parameters we have? How early to start the dropping packets, and what time scale or what averaging Q length we have to take. So these are the issues what your red algorithm would encounter. So basically, either your TCP or with respect to the IP, we can use this mechanism for condition avoidance. So one more we have, that is the source-based condition, source-based condition avoidance. I didn't take any snapshots of that. How this is done is, this is done based on whether or not to adjust the window size depending on the round trip time. So if your the window can be adjusted once every round trip delays based on your current window and the old window, and also based on the current round trip time and the old round trip time. And if it is like, if I take the difference between these two and take a multiplication factor, then I can go with a source-based condition avoidance. So let me not dig into that. So till here is where as your concept to be discussed. So we have three mechanisms. One is decibit, one is random early detection, and one is condition-based, source-based condition. I will not go into that particular method. So this is where I think I had your syllabus is discussing all about. And we have one more topic to discuss. I think I forgot this. This is your concept of your fifth unit. There's one topic to discuss, that is all about data compression. Probably this could be one of the prerequisites for your 7th sem elective subject. I think I have another 10 more minutes. I want you to log into the same ID, because we'll discuss some quiz related to your 5th unit as well as the 4th unit. Right? Am I audible, guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just left out with one small topic, that is your data compression. This could be a prerequisite for one of your 7th sem subject called multimedia communication. So a part, as discussed in this, probably we are just touching 0.5% of, not even 0.5%. It's a very small topic to be discussed. But if you take the elective multimedia communication, there you can see how we can go with the data compression techniques as well as quick glance of the data. Your quiz also incorporates your data compression, or any theory concept would be asked under data compression. Fine. So basically, why we need a compression? All of you are aware of why we need a compression techniques. So when we are going into the concept of sharing the data, basically what we have, how do we share this particular data in a very compressed manner so that at the receiving end, this can be received very successfully, or I can say that data compression is a process of reducing the amount of data required to represent a given quality of information. So you are not losing the information. Only thing is you are just reducing the memory required for the storage, and with this you can reduce the bandwidth also, so that you can transfer this across the communication channel. So this is the idea behind a compression. So basically, to reduce the amount of space required, for example, anything I can tell, if it is a video file of 2 hours, definitely what would be the size? It could be a 2 GB size. That would be an uncompressed data. If I want to compress, I will compress to either 750 MB or etc. etc. So less number of bits I use to represent this. How to represent this is the challenge, and that is the technique of your data compression. So anything it could be, either your audio, your video, text, or an image, anything we can compress. Only thing is we want to reduce it so that the bandwidth utilization is not more. So that is the idea based on data compression. Right? So all of you are familiar with what will happen in a data in a encoder and a decoder. So basically, your one of the block in your communication system is your encoder and decoder block. So what will happen? Your input data, which is in an uncompressed format, will be passed on to an encoder. Please be imaginative. I don't have the diagram. So whatever we have as an input in an uncompressed form will be given to an encoder. The encoder is where in which you compress the data, and at the receiver side, you have a decoder where you get back the original data. Right. So basically, this could be a building block of your communication system. So what type of data compression techniques we have, and how do we classify this is the topic of interest. Right. So basically, what is that data compression is telling you? It is implying sending or storing of a small number of bits. So we can generalize this into a lossy compression methods as well as a lossless compression method. So if you are interested to take this particular subject in your 7th sem, then this is what is the story in that particular whole subject. So you will be discussing about the concepts of lot many protocols implemented for these MMCs, that is the multimedia communication to enable, and the different techniques for audio, video, text as well as image. Right. So we divide it into lossy compression as well as lossless compression. Under lossless compression, I hope everybody know what is a lossless compression. There should not be any loss of data. Whatever you send in a compressed form had to be received at the receiver with no loss of data. So such techniques are lossless methods. When I mean a lossy methods, your compression would be for image, video as well as audio, because our eyes as well as our ears are susceptible to such type of noise. So we can rectify ourselves. So basically, lossless methods are applied for the text type of things, and lossy methods are applied for image, video as well as audio type of multimedia concepts, right? So in the lossless methods, we have something called as a run length coding. I hope you have come across Lempel Ziv coding. So these are the 3 techniques at the lossless methods what we have. Of course, we have n number of methods. When you go with the discussion with your MMC subject, we can discuss in detail which are the more sophisticated lossless methods. When I come to the lossy methods, I think all of you are familiar. We have JPEG, MPEG as well as the MP3. Nowadays, so many methods have come across. We have a lot of gap. We have to fill that. Filling would be done in your multimedia communication if you're taking that particular subject. Fine. So what basically is your lossless compression and lossy compression? No information should be lost, and original data exactly has to be recovered at the receiver, and the low compression ratio is what does a lossless compression refers to. When I mean a lossy compression, this loss of information can be there. The only thing is the human ear as well as the eyes are susceptible to such particular type of compression scenarios. So that is what is meant by lossless as well as lossy. So yeah, so the same story. I hope all of you know what does a JPEG refers to. This is nothing but a joint for photographic expert group, which is an encoding method used to compress pictures as well as graphics. All of you are aware of this. MPEG basically for moving picture export groups, basically for compressing the video, and MP3 for audio compressions. So these things you will be dealing in detail in your MMC subject, right? So here what I do is I go with a quick glance of whatever the technique we have. Yes, I told you under the lossless compression, we have one method, that is the run length coding. Before I go to all these methods, let me give you a quick recap of what is a compression ratio refers to. I don't have the what do I say? The slide on a compression ratio. It is nothing but the ratio of the compressed file size to the original file size would be the compressed ratio. And the compression factor could be, I have another 2 minutes, please log in. The compression factor could be, it is nothing but the inverse of the compression ratio. So 1 upon the compression ratio would be the compression factor. And when I mean a compression time, these are some of the parameters. When I mean a compression time, your compression time is nothing but the time taken by the encoder to compress the input data, or it is the total time to compress as well as decompress the original data. Given data in a given time is nothing but your compression as well as decompression time. So I discussed 3 things. One is the compression ratio. It is basically a ratio of compressed file size to that of the original size. And one more I told you, compression factor. It is nothing but the inverse of compression ratio. And I have decompression compression time. It is nothing but the time taken to compress as well as decompress the data. So with this idea, let me enter into your first type of coding method for lossless methods. One is the run length encoding. I think most of you know this. I'll not go beyond the theory. Let me go directly into the example. What I have an original data of, basically for text type of data we are trying to compress. So we have so much of information. I need to compress this. What I do is the long sequence of symbols, I reduce it into the simpler one. Basically, it is the simplest type of a data compression. And in this, the runs of data are stored as single data values. So runs are nothing but the sequence of same symbols. So, for example, if I have B here, I have how many such Bs? I have 9 such Bs. Okay, fine. I would like to once again log in. I have just 1 minute time, so I expect everybody to log in. So I have how many runs of Bs? 9 runs of Bs. So I will represent it as I'm compressing. So B09. How many A's I have? I have 16 A's. So it is ACN01. And how many M's I have? I have 10 M's. So this is how I have compressed. So if I want to decompress it, I'll just do the reverse procedure. That is, how many 9s I have? Because you have to get the data as it is, right? So I write back 9 Bs and I write back 16 Bs. This is how I get the original information. But the disadvantage with such type of a method, am I audible? Hello? One of the method, what we call it as the run length coding method. So what is that? Here we are representing as the runs of data. Just now I told you how do we represent. But the disadvantage in such type of a technique is, if you don't have repeated runs of the data, then the number of bits, whatever you use to compress the data, will be more than the original one. Now, for example, if my original data is XYZ, remember this XYZ is not having continuous runs. So how do I represent it as a compressed data? X01, Y01, Z01. So instead of using 3 what do I say, 3 characters, now I am increasing it by 6 characters. Or if you place it in terms of bits, instead of using 3 bits, I am going to use 6 bits. So such type of run length encoding is not suitably applied in our lossless compression method. So we'll go for one more, that is Huffman coding. I hope Huffman coding is known to you. Shall I skip this? Hello? Am I audible, guys? Are you aware of Huffman coding? Anyone, please acknowledge. Hello, are you able to hear me, guys? Okay, Sagar, but most of them have left. What do I do? Are you able to hear? Shall I skip Huffman coding because you know already Huffman coding concept? Fixed line coding, Huffman coding. Yeah, please go through uh, this. Yes, yes, Rakshak. Am I audible?
No, by mistake.
Rakshak, are all of you aware of Huffman coding?
Yes, from CS1 it was there.
Yeah, I think I'll skip this. Depending on your frequency of occurrence, you give the value in the alphabet. Basically, like for this example, 17 times the A character is appearing. Similarly, B, C, whatever, right? So then what you do, you arrange this in the decreasing order, and you go on giving the binary values for this. So if I do that, yeah, I have an example. If I do that, I would form a tree structure, and you know that you read in an inverse format. And how we represent A is nothing but 0 0, B is nothing but 0, sorry, 0 1 0, because we have given the what do I say, the numbering to these particular based on the occurrence value, right? So I think I'll skip this. Please go through the Huffman coding as well as decoding. Then we have one more algorithm, that is Lempel-Z. This is nothing but a dictionary based algorithm. So for example, if I have this as an uncompressed data, so every time it is reading in the, like, saving into its memory. For example, B is arrived for the first time, it will save into the memory. Similarly, based on how will be your occurrence, you are giving the number. Now, for example, B is the first one and A is the second one. Similarly, I have AB as the third one. So next I have ABB. So this ABB is having AB also as well as B also. So based on that, you go on giving the compressed values here. Similarly, the decoding will be based on this dictionary itself. So I have the dictionary maintained at both the sender side as well as the receiver side. So based on this reading and learning procedure, we compress and decompress it, right? So I'll just skip all these things. I think the theory part you can go through. Decompression, lossy compression. I have these three techniques. I told you we are not discussing in detail. Just with a small quick glance, we are going for the JPEG. We have this technique. How do we represent in a grayscale format, etc., etc. Then we have for discrete cosine transfer for your JPEG, the lossy compression technique. So all these things, good discussion. So hope you can go through with all these simple concepts. Don't go in depth on the different techniques you have in case of your lossy compressions also, right? Okay, a quick glance on this compression as well as the lossless compression. So these techniques you remember, and whichever technique where we are applying. Just remember this particular concept. So with this, I have a few problems to discuss. Shall I share these problems instead of discussing? I have quiz also. I think you can go through with all these quiz. Shall I skip or you want me to discuss? I can share these informations to you. Anything would be fine for me. So shall I share all these things?